He should not have said it in that voice. Not in his office. Not with my resignation letter torn in half at our feet. Not after 2 weeks of acting like I was nothing more than a calendar, a keyboard, and a pair of hands that kept her life in order. You do not get to leave because other people are uncomfortable with what I protected. Vanessa Hail had never raised her voice at me before. She did not need to. The force was in the control. In the way she looked straight at me, like the truth was a blade and she had decided not to spare me from it. I remember staring at her and thinking the same thing I had thought the day I fell asleep on her shoulder. This should not be happening. I had come into her office ready to give up the job, protect her name, and walk away before the rumors got uglier. Instead, and she was standing so close I could see that she looked tired too. Not polished tired, not executive tired, real tired. The kind a person wears when they have been holding too much for too long. Then she said the one thing that made leaving feel impossible. "Caleb," she said, quieter now, "if you want to run from this, say it honestly. But don't call it sacrifice." And standing there with my heart pounding, I realized I had no idea which part of this was ruining me more. Loving her, or being seen by her. 2 months earlier, I would have laughed if someone told me my life could come apart because I was too tired to keep my eyes open. Back then, everything in me ran on routine. Wake up before 6, review Vanessa's calendar, clear overnight emails, confirm the board packets, fix whatever emergency had been dropped into my inbox while I slept for 4.5 hours and pretended that counted as recovery, then the office, then whatever side work I could force myself through after dark so my loans, rent, and groceries did not swallow me whole. I did not think of myself as miserable. Miserable sounded dramatic. I thought of myself as temporary exhaustion, temporary debt, temporary loneliness. If I kept moving, all of it would become manageable. That was the lie I lived on. Vanessa Hail fit neatly into that life because she asked for excellence and nothing personal. As far as bosses went, she was easier to respect than most. She never played warm when she meant cold, never fished for praise, never wasted words. She told me what she needed. I delivered it. That was the arrangement. And for 1.5 years, it worked. Then came the meeting. People in that company still talk about it like it was some kind of corporate ghost story. The assistant who fell asleep on the CEO in front of half the senior leadership team, the moment the room stopped breathing. What they do not understand is that I did not feel myself fall asleep. I felt myself fading. There is a difference. 1 second, I was taking notes while finance and operations argued over expansion risk. The next second, the voices around me turned soft and far away. My screen blurred. My neck went loose. Then darkness opened for what felt like a blink. When I came back, I was leaning against Vanessa's shoulder, not brushed against, not nearly touching, resting there. My whole body locked. I jerked upright so fast my chair squeaked against the floor, and the room had gone silent. Every person at that table was staring at me with the same expression. Shock first, then hunger, because people love the moment they think someone disciplined is about to break. I waited for the damage, for Vanessa to cut me down in one clean sentence and make an example out of me. Instead, she looked at the room and said, "We'll continue tomorrow." That was it. No public humiliation. No sharp rebuke. No controlled corporate execution. Just dismissal. The others filed out too quietly. No one wanted to miss the private fallout, but no one was brave enough to stay and watch it happen in front of her. When the door shut, I stood there with my face burning so hard I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," I said. "That won't happen again." She did not answer right away. She capped her pen, closed her notebook. And then she looked at me with that steady, exact gaze that made most executives sit up straighter. How long have you been sleeping this badly? I actually thought I had heard her wrong, not, are you serious? Not what the hell was that? How long? I gave her the kind of answer proud men give when they are one push away from falling apart. I'm fine. She leaned back in her chair. No, she said. You are highly functional. That is not the same thing. It would have been easier if she had been angry. Anger, I understood. Anger had shape, consequences, distance. Concern was harder. Concern asked questions that got under the skin. I told her it was just a rough week. She kept looking at me. I told her I had taken on extra work. Still nothing from her but that calm attention. So I said more than I meant to. And about the student loans, about the freelance projects, about staying up until 3 finishing reports for people who would never know my face, about how sleep had become something I borrowed and paid back later. She listened like I was giving a briefing. When I was done, she said, "Go home." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Go home, Caleb. Sleep for 8 hours. Turn your phone off. I'll manage the rest." I should have argued. I almost did. But there was something in her tone that stopped me. Not softness, exactly. Something firmer than that. Care, stripped of decoration. So I went home. I slept so hard I woke up confused by the sunlight, like my body did not trust what had happened. The next morning I came in early, half expecting a formal warning from HR or at least a conversation I would hate remembering. Instead, Vanessa walked past my desk, handed me a folder, and said, "Conference room B in 10. Just work. Clean, controlled, normal." Only it was not normal after that. The midnight emails stopped first. Then the useless early calls disappeared from my calendar. Not the important ones. Just the ones she could move without creating problems. She delegated a few minor tasks that usually landed on me, asked another team to cover pieces of prep I had always handled alone, nothing obvious enough for anyone to call it special treatment. But I noticed. I noticed because I knew exactly how she worked. Vanessa did not do random kindness. She did efficient, deliberate decisions. If something changed, it changed because she meant it to. One evening, she came out of her office and found me still at my desk after 8, fixing a presentation that had gone sideways twice already. "You're still here," she said. It was not really a question. "I want this clean before morning." She set her briefcase down, then she asked, "Is there anyone waiting for you at home?" I looked up at her. That was the first truly personal question she had ever asked me. The honest answer slipped out before I could reshape it. No. Something unreadable moved through her face. Gone in a second. "Go home," she said. "I can finish it." "I know." There was no edge in her voice, no criticism either, just certainty. I hesitated long enough to make it awkward. Then I packed up and left. The next morning, the presentation was finished. Every broken section fixed, every chart tightened, every weak phrase rewritten in Vanessa's exact style. And she had stayed and completed it herself. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling something in my chest go tight. Not because she helped me, because she did it without telling me. Without asking for thanks. Without leaving any sign except the work itself. That should have been the moment I pulled back. A smart man would have. Because once someone sees where you are breaking and quietly puts a hand over the crack, you start depending on the pressure. You start waiting for it. You start measuring your day by the moments they notice what no one else does. And I was not stupid. I knew what it meant that my pulse changed when I heard her office door open. I knew it was dangerous that the best part of my day had become the 5 seconds when she slid a marked-up file across my desk and said my name like it mattered. And I knew none of that could end well while she was still my boss. Then the whispers started. At first it was small, conversation cutting off when I entered the break room, a joke that died too fast, a look between two directors after Vanessa moved a late call off my schedule. Then it got uglier. Golden boy. Special treatment. Must be nice. I told myself I could handle gossip. I had handled worse than gossip. But shame works differently when you know there is one person whose opinion matters more than the rest, and people are trying to rot it from the outside in. The real blow came 3 days later. A memo from HR landed in everyone's inbox just after lunch. Reminder: professional boundaries and reporting structure. I read it once, then again. By the second paragraph, my stomach had gone cold. No names, no direct accusation. But the timing was too neat, too pointed. Someone had pushed. Someone wanted it seen. I printed the memo and walked it straight to Vanessa's office. She read the first line, then set it down. "I received it too," she said. That should have comforted me. It did not. Because when she looked up, the distance was already back in her eyes. And when she spoke, her voice was so controlled it scared me more than anger would have. "In this office," she said, "you will address me as Miss Hail. Effective immediately, we return to standard protocol." I stared at her. Just like that, the air changed. The late-night messages came back. The breathing room disappeared, her tone flattened. The invisible care that had carried me through the last few weeks vanished so completely, I almost wondered if I had imagined it. Almost, but not quite. And because that night, for the first time since the meeting, I understood something worse than exhaustion. What it felt like to miss a kindness you were never supposed to need. And 2 weeks later, I walked into her office with my resignation letter. I put the envelope on her desk like it weighed nothing. That was the trick with pride. You learned how to make heavy things look light. "I'm giving notice of it," I said. 2 weeks. Vanessa did not reach for the envelope right away. She looked at it first, then at me. Her face gave me nothing, which somehow made it worse. I had rehearsed the speech all weekend. Clean words, respectful words. Words that would let her keep her dignity and let me leave before the rumors turned into something harder to survive. "I think it's the best option," I added. "For the company." "What for you?" That was when she stood up. Not fast. Vanessa never moved fast unless it served a purpose. She came around the desk, picked up the envelope, and tore it straight through the middle. The sound was soft. The impact was not. The pieces fell between us like white ash. "You do not get to decide what is best for me," she said. I had seen her dismantle billion-dollar negotiations with less force than that sentence. I stared at the torn paper on the floor. "Miss Hail." "No." Her voice sharpened. "Don't hide behind that now." For a second, neither of us moved. I could hear the faint hum of the air vent. A phone ringing somewhere far outside her office. My own pulse, loud and stupid in my ears. I should have walked out. That would have been the safer choice. But something in me had been stretched too thin for too long. Shame. Unwanted exhaustion. The ache of 2 weeks spent pretending I did not notice the distance she forced back between us. So I looked at her and said the thing I had spent days trying not to admit. "I'm trying to keep your name clean." Her jaw tightened. "And what about mine?" I asked. "Do you think this hasn't touched me?" That landed. Not because she had not thought of it. Vanessa thought of everything. It landed because I said it without fear. For once, not as her assistant. Not as the person who solved problems before she saw them. Just as a man who was tired of being treated like he could carry every consequence in silence. She folded her arms. "Say what you actually mean, Caleb." That was the problem. I did not know which truth would come out first. That I hated what people were saying, and that I hated how easily she had shut the door after opening it. Or that the worst part of all this was how badly I missed her concern. I laughed once under my breath. No humor in it. "You want the honest version?" I asked. "Yes." "Fine," I swallowed. "When HR sent that memo, I thought transferring out would solve it. You said no. Then you put the wall back up and acted like none of it ever happened. Like I imagined the whole thing." Her expression shifted just enough for me to know I hit something real. "I did what was necessary," she said. "For who?" Her eyes held mine. "For both of us." I shook my head. "No, you did what was safest." The silence after that had weight. Vanessa turned away first, walked to the window, and put one hand in the pocket of her blazer and stared down at the city like it might offer a cleaner answer than I could. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. "You think I enjoyed that?" I said nothing. She turned back to face me. "You think I wanted to go from making sure you got home before midnight to sending you emails at 1 in the morning again?" The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because they confirmed what I had been trying to downplay. She had been making sure. On purpose, not by accident. Not because I mattered as an employee and nothing more. "I was trying to contain it," she said. "It?" I asked, though I already knew. Her eyes narrowed a little. "Don't make me drag every word out." That should have scared me. Instead, it made my chest hurt. Because there it was again. And that impossible thing between us, not spoken cleanly, not denied either. I took a slow breath. "Then tell me what I'm staying for." Her face went still. I had not planned to say that. But once it was in the room, I could not take it back. "If this is just damage control," I said, "then tearing up my resignation doesn't help anyone. If you want distance, I can give it to you. If you want professionalism, I know how to do that. But I'm not going to stand here and pretend this doesn't feel like losing something." Something flickered in her expression then. Not the CEO, not Miss Hale. Vanessa. Tired, frustrated. Cornered by a truth she could usually outmaneuver. When she spoke, it came out quieter than before. "I do not want you to go." The sentence was simple. It still felt like the floor moved under me. I looked at her, waiting for the professional explanation. The strategic one. The version about workflow and trust and finding competent people in high-pressure roles. She gave me none of that. "I do not want you to go," she repeated. "Not because replacing you would be inconvenient. Not because it would cause disruption. Because when you are gone, this place changes." I could not speak. She noticed. Of course she did. So she kept going. And that might have been the bravest thing I ever saw her do. "You were right about one thing," she said. "I chose the safest option. I rebuilt distance because once people started whispering, every glance became suspect, every adjustment, every conversation. And I could handle that for myself. I could not let it damage your future." The room felt too small suddenly. "My future," I said. Yes." Her voice steadied. "You are not staying in this role forever." That surprised me enough to cut through everything else. She walked back to the desk and opened the top drawer. From inside, she pulled a thin folder and laid it in front of me. I did not touch it at first. "Open it," she said. Inside was a formal proposal. New title. New reporting line. Expanded scope. Better salary. A role positioned under the executive team, not under her. It was real, detailed, thought through down to transition phases and approval steps. I looked up at her. "When did you do this?" "Before the HR memo." The answer sat between us, before the rumors got loud enough to force distance, before I resigned, before any confession either of us had the courage to call by its name. "You were planning to move me out from under you," I said. "Oh, I was planning to move you up," she corrected. No softness, just truth. I looked back down at the pages, my throat tightened in a way I hated. "You think I need protecting?" "No," she said immediately. "I think you need room." That was somehow worse, because pity would have offended me. This did not feel like pity. This felt like someone seeing what I could become and refusing to let me stay smaller just because it was convenient for them. I set the folder down carefully. "Why didn't you tell me?" Vanessa let out a breath that was almost a laugh, though there was nothing light in it. "Because I hadn't decided whether it was for you or for me." That honest answer stripped the last defense right out of me. I sat down without asking, suddenly aware that my legs were no longer steady. The chair felt too low, and the room too bright. She stayed standing for another moment, then came around to the other side of the desk and leaned against it, close enough that I could see the tension in her shoulders. Neither of us spoke. At last I said, "This can't keep happening while you're still my boss." "I know. And if we do nothing, the gossip keeps growing." "I know. And if we do something reckless, they'll be right." For the first time that morning, the edge of a tired smile touched her mouth. "I know that too." I rubbed a hand over my face. "I'm not good at half steps." "No," she said, "you are not." There was a strange comfort in hearing that, in being known that exactly. I looked up at her. "Then what are we talking about here?" Her answer came after a pause, measured, deliberate, and like she was choosing each word with care because once spoken, none of them could be taken back. "We are talking about honesty," she said, "and structure. In that order." I frowned. "If there is something here," she continued, "it does not begin while you report directly to me. It does not grow in secret. It does not depend on your job, your schedule, or my authority. I will not build anything with you on terms I would not respect in someone else." That was Vanessa. Even now, even with her voice lower and her guard cracked open, her ethics stood in the room with us. And the maddening part was that it made me want her more, not less. I looked down at the torn pieces of my resignation still on the floor. "I don't want to be your risk," I said quietly. Something changed in her face at that. "Caleb," she said, and this time my name sounded almost rough coming from her. "You are not my risk." I swallowed hard. "Then what am I?" She held my eyes so steadily it almost hurt. "You are the person I have been trying not to choose before I had the right to." The words went through me like heat. No grand confession, no dramatic step forward, just that. Careful. Serious. Almost restrained enough to break me. I stood up too fast and nearly knocked the chair back. She straightened at once, as if ready to catch it, or me, or both. I steadied myself. For one ridiculous second, all I could think about was the first time my head had dropped against her shoulder and how impossible this had felt then. Now it felt even more impossible. But cleaner, too, because the shape of the truth was finally visible. And I took the folder again and held it in both hands. If I accept this role, and if HR signs off, and if we restructure everything properly. "Yes?" she said. The question that came out of me was quieter than I meant it to be. "Would you still want this when it's no longer complicated?" She did not answer right away. That pause scared me more than anything else that morning. Then she stepped closer, just once, and said, "I want it precisely, because I'm trying to remove the complication." My chest tightened so hard I had to look away. Outside her office, someone passed by, laughing at something far down the hall. A normal office sound. Ordinary. Almost absurd against the silence between us. I let out a breath. I can't do casual. Her reply came without hesitation. Neither can I. It should have felt like relief, and instead, it felt like standing on the edge of something that could still ruin us if we mishandled one step. But for the first time, ruin was not the only thing in view. There was also choice. There was also honesty. There was also the terrifying possibility that what began in my worst moment might become the most careful thing either of us had ever built. Vanessa looked at the folder in my hands, then back at me. "Think for 5 minutes, if you need to," she said. "Then come with me to HR." And just like that, the next part of our story was no longer about hiding. It was about whether we were brave enough to do it in the light. I did not take the 5 minutes. Maybe I should have. Maybe a smarter man would have stepped outside, walked a lap around the floor, splashed water on his face, and then returned with something steadier in his chest. I stayed where I was. I looked at Vanessa, at the folder in my hands, at the torn pieces of my resignation on the floor between us, like proof that one version of my life had already ended. Then I said, "Let's go now before one of us decides to hide again." Something softened in her face. Not relief exactly, more like recognition. As if she had expected courage from me and was still moved when it showed up anyway. She bent once, gathered the ripped pieces of the resignation letter, and dropped them into the trash beside her desk. It was a small motion, quiet, final. Then she straightened her jacket and opened the door. We walked out side by side, not touching, not speaking. But for the first time since the shoulder incident, I did not feel like I was walking behind her. And I was walking with her into something that could either clear the air or light the whole place on fire. HR sat on the 19th floor in a corridor nobody visited, unless they had to. The carpet was too soft, the glass walls too clean. Even the silence there felt procedural. Vanessa asked for a private meeting with the head of HR and got one within minutes. That was her influence. The kind that opened doors. The kind I had spent weeks trying not to be trapped beneath. Once we were inside, she did something I will never forget. She let me speak first. That mattered more than I can explain. It meant this was not her controlling the narrative. Not her framing me into some version of the truth that made things easier. She gave me the space to describe the reporting line, the rumors, my resignation attempt, and the need for a restructuring before anything personal was allowed to exist. I chose my words carefully. I said nothing dramatic, nothing messy, no confessions that belonged to us alone, just the facts. There had been concern about appearance. There had been changes in workflow. There could be no ethical future for anything unless my role changed first. The HR director listened with the kind of expression people in that job perfect over time. Neutral, trained, impossible to read. Then she turned to Vanessa, expecting either correction or corporate smoothing. Vanessa gave her neither. She confirmed everything I said. Then she added one more thing. This process will not move forward if it compromises his position. His, not the company's, not optics, not mine as an executive. His. I kept my face still, but I felt that word land somewhere deep. By the time we left the office, the path was clear. My transfer would be formalized under the Executive Operations Group. I would no longer report to Vanessa. There would be a cooling period while the paperwork cleared and the chain of command shifted. After that, if we chose to pursue something personal, it would be documented properly and reviewed under standard policy. It was clinical, unromantic. Exactly right. Outside the HR office, we stopped near the elevators. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Vanessa said, "You handled that well." I looked at the closed elevator doors. I thought I was going to pass out. A small sound left her, almost a laugh. "I know." That one sentence steadied me more than praise would have. Yet the days that followed were stranger than any scandal could have been, because nothing exploded. That was the part I had not expected. No dramatic confrontation in the hallway. No board-level disaster. No public lecture about standards. There were whispers, of course. There were always whispers, but without secrecy to feed on, they lost some of their power. Rumors need shadows. We had dragged ours into conference rooms and paperwork and signatures. People still looked. Some with curiosity, some with judgment, some with the disappointment of people who had wanted uglier answers. I let them look. I had spent too much of my life trying to survive by being invisible, reliable, useful, easy to overlook as long as the work stayed flawless. There was a strange kind of freedom in being seen and not retreating. My new role started 2 weeks later, Director of Operational Coordination. The title still felt too large in my mouth at first. The office was bigger than my old one, though that did not mean much. A window that faced west. A desk without Vanessa's calendar taking over one side of it. More strategy meetings, more cross-team projects. More decisions that carried my name instead of hers. And the salary increase changed my life faster than I knew how to admit. I paid off one of my smaller loans in the first month, cut back on freelance work, slept more than 5 hours without guilt chewing through it, bought groceries without checking my bank app 3 times in the aisle. Small things. Ordinary things. But when you have been living with pressure for years, ordinary can feel holy. At work, Vanessa did not go easy on me. If anything, as she became more exacting. She challenged my reports in meetings, pushed back on weak assumptions, sent edits that were somehow both brutal and useful. If I missed a thread in a cross-functional problem, she noticed. If I got defensive, she noticed that too. It would have been easier if she had softened. Easier but wrong. Because every hard question she asked me in public was proof of the thing I had needed most. That my place there was earned. And I did earn it. Not all at once. Not cleanly. I stumbled my first month. Took too much on. Misjudged one team lead, and almost let a deadline slip because I thought quiet people were low risk. Vanessa called me into a meeting afterward and asked 3 questions that stripped my mistake to the bone. I left irritated. Then I sat with it. Then I fixed it. That became our rhythm at work. A pressure, adjustment, respect. No one could call it favoritism. Not with the way she held my work up to the light. Outside work was different. The cooling period ended on a Thursday. I know that because I barely heard anything all day. Every meeting sounded muffled. Every email felt pointless. By 6:30, I had rewritten the same sentence in a project memo 4 times and still hated it. At 6:42, my phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. "There's a quiet Italian place on Wabash. 7:30, if you're still willing." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I typed back, "I'm willing." The restaurant was small and dim in a way that did not try too hard. No view, no trend-chasing crowd, just low light, dark wood, soft music, and the smell of garlic and fresh bread the moment I walked in. And she was already there. Not CEO Vanessa. Not Miss Hail in a conference room full of investors. Just Vanessa in a dark green dress and a coat draped over the back of her chair, looking up when she saw me with an expression I had never been given at work. Nervous. That nearly undid me, because it meant I was not the only one risking something. Dinner was not smooth at first. We were too used to structure, too trained in efficiency. We started with safe topics, almost laughably safe. Traffic, a product launch, whether the restaurant's menu was trying too hard to be minimalist. Then somewhere between the pasta and the second glass of water, the room changed. Not because of anything dramatic, because she asked, what did you want to be before survival became your full-time job? No one had ever asked me that question, like it mattered. Not what was your degree in, not what's your 5-year plan. What did you want before life narrowed? So I told her. About the years in college when I thought I would build something of my own one day. About how responsibility had a way of shrinking ambition into manageable shapes. About how being useful became easier than being hopeful. She listened the way she always did when she was serious. No interruption, no rush to answer with her own story just to fill the space. When I finished, she said, I hate how many good people learn to dream in smaller rooms. That line stayed with me. It still does. I asked about her then. Not the version of her people in the office knew. The real one. She was quieter answering, more careful. She told me leadership had made her lonelier than success was supposed to feel. That competence attracted dependence, not closeness. That most people either wanted something from her or wanted to prove they did not need her. Very few ever stood beside her without trying to win. I never had to guess with you, she said. I smiled a little. You still don't. I know, she said and held my eyes a second too long. When we left the restaurant, the city air had gone cool. We walked 2 blocks before either of us said much. At the corner near the train station, she stopped. This is the part where a less careful person would do something cinematic, she said. I laughed. And what does a careful person do? She looked at me then, really looked. A careful person asks. The question in her eyes hit me before the words did. Can I kiss you? Everything in me went still. Yes, I said. It was not a reckless kiss. Not rushed. Not hungry, in the way people expect stories like ours to become. It was slower than that. Intentional. The kind of kiss that says, I know what this costs, and I am here anyway. When she pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine for one breath and said, Good. That one word made me laugh under it. Not because it was funny, because it was so completely her. From there, we built in quiet ways, dinners that lasted too long because neither of us wanted to be first to leave. Walks by the river when both of us needed to come down from impossible days. Coffee at her place while she reviewed contracts, and I cleaned up process notes, and the two of us working in the same room without needing to fill every silence. There was one night in early winter when I fell asleep on her couch with a spreadsheet open on my laptop and woke to a blanket over me and the screen dimmed. She was at the dining table, still working, glasses low on her nose, one hand wrapped around a mug gone cold. I pushed myself up. You should have woken me. She glanced over. You needed the sleep. I smiled. You keep saying that like I don't have a choice. You do, she said. You just make bad ones when left alone. And that became one of our private jokes. Not because exhaustion's funny, because care, when it is consistent, starts to sound like home. 3 months later, I finally ended my last freelance contract. I told her over takeout at my apartment. Nothing fancy. Thai food in paper boxes. A city noise through the thin walls. Her shoes by the door. My suit jacket over the kitchen chair. She looked at me for a long second and said, How does it feel? I thought about it. Like I can hear myself again. She set her fork down after that and reached for my hand. No speech, no celebration bigger than the truth itself. Sometimes love enters loudly. Ours did not. It entered like rest, like someone opening a door and not asking you to earn the right to walk through it. 6 months after that first impossible meeting, we sat through another strategy session with half the same executives at the same polished table. Different quarter, different battle. Same fluorescent lights that made everyone look a little more tired than they wanted to admit. I was not at her right hand anymore. My seat was farther down the table now, where my role belonged. I gave my updates. She challenged one of my assumptions. I adjusted. The room moved on. Near the end, fatigue tugged at me. Nothing like before, nothing dangerous. Just the normal weight of a long week. As the meeting broke, Vanessa passed behind my chair and let her fingers rest on my shoulder for 1 second. No one would have noticed unless they were looking for it. But I felt it. A quiet check-in, a private language. I looked up. She did not smile, not there, not then. She only asked, low enough for no one else to hear, "You okay?" And because of everything that had changed, because I slept now, because I was no longer trying to survive on pride and caffeine and borrowed time, I could answer honestly. "Yeah," I said. "Just the good kind of tired." Her eyes softened. "That," she said, "I can live with." We left the room separately. We always did when it made sense. Not out of fear, out of respect for the life we had built with care instead of impulse. Later that night, I got home and found her in my kitchen, with takeout already on the counter and my spare key in the bowl by the door. That key hit me harder than I expected, not because it was dramatic, because it was ordinary. Trust usually arrives disguised as something simple. A key, a toothbrush, a mug that starts staying at the other person's place without discussion. I picked it up and turned it over in my hand. Vanessa looked up from unpacking the food. "Too much?" I shook my head. "No," I said, just enough." She came over then, stood in front of me, and touched my tie like she was straightening it, even though the day was already over. "But you still overwork," she said. "You still notice." "I always will. Some lines are romantic because they sound beautiful. Some are romantic because they are true." I looked at her standing there in my narrow kitchen, city light slipping through the blinds, and thought about the man I had been when this started. Half-starved for sleep, buried in debt. So determined to remain useful that I forgot I was allowed to be known. I thought about that meeting, about shame, about whispers, about the torn resignation letter, about the careful way we chose honesty over secrecy and structure over impulse. And I understood something I wish I had learned much earlier. Being loved is not the same as being rescued. She did not rescue me, she saw me, and then she stayed long enough for me to become someone who could see her too. And that is rarer than people think. That is harder than people think. And maybe that is why it lasts. Because some people enter your life like a spark. Fast, bright, impossible to hold. But some people arrive like shelter, quiet, steady, certain. The kind you only understand after you have spent too long out in the cold. I used to think the most dangerous moment of my life was falling asleep on my boss's shoulder in front of a room full of powerful people. I was wrong. The most dangerous moment was what came after, when she looked at me, saw exactly how tired I was, and decided not to look away. That was the beginning, not of scandal, not of fantasy, of something better, of two people who learned that love is not always a fire you fall into. Sometimes it is the place your life finally gets to rest. He stayed honest. She stayed careful. And that changed everything.